The doctor's voice was calm, almost apologetic. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 4. I'm sorry, Mr. Brown. Ramon didn't say a word. He just stared at the anatomy chart behind the doctor's head, thinking about the irony. After decades of surviving shootouts, riots, and street corners soaked in blood, it would be something inside him, a quiet, invisible thing, that finally got him. He walked out of the clinic with the same measured stride he had used for over 30 years in the Los Angeles Police Department. That same walk that told punks on the corner and rookies in uniform that he was unshakable, untouchable. But tonight, his steps were slower. He didn't drive home. He walked. The air was dry and cold, the sky smeared with that burnt orange haze that settled over the city every evening. At home, he sat in the recliner, same chair he had fallen asleep in more times than he could count. His daughter Lily hadn't visited in weeks, too busy with her own life in San Diego. He didn't blame her. She thought he was just a grumpy old man clinging to his badge like it was the only thing that defined him. Maybe she was right. Ramon poured a glass of whiskey. He didn't drink much anymore, but this was different. This wasn't a toast. This was an offering, a ritual. Then he pulled out his phone, opened the camera app, pressed record. His voice cracked from the first word. Lily, he said, if you're watching this, it means I'm gone. And I'm not leaving you money, or land, or even a clean name. What I'm leaving you is something else. A truth I buried 20 years ago. He paused, breathed. There was a boy. His name was Marcus Ellis. He was 17. And I shot him. Silence. I thought he had a gun. It was dark, fast. But there was no gun. Just a phone. 1 second later, and maybe I would have seen it. 1 second. That's all it took. The whiskey stayed untouched. My partner said we cover it up. Said no one would believe the truth. Said it would tear everything apart. So I lied. I lied to the world, to his mother, to you. And now it's eating me alive. He hit stop. Outside, a siren wailed in the distance. Just another night in Los Angeles. But inside the quiet house, something had shifted. Ramon stood up, walked to the window, and looked out over the neighborhood. Families eating dinner, televisions flickering, children laughing, and somewhere out there, a woman who had buried her son. Ramon made a decision. Tomorrow, he would find her. The old case files were gone. Ramon had driven to the LAPD archives, using the excuse of personal legacy research to get past the disinterested clerk at the front desk. After all, he had retired with honors. People still called him Detective Brown, even though the badge had been locked away in a drawer for 8 years. The archive room was cold and smelled like old paper and cleaning chemicals. Rows of metal cabinets lined the walls, each drawer labeled with years and incident types. He moved down to the section marked 1999, Officer-Involved Incidents. The folder was supposed to be there. Marcus Ellis, South LA. Shooting. April 12th, 1999. It wasn't. He double-checked the dates, scanned every drawer on the shelf. Nothing. It was as if the entire event had been swallowed by time, or erased. Only one person had the authority, and the motivation, to do that. Patrick Hardy. Ramon hadn't spoken to him in over a decade. They had drifted after retirement, though drifted was generous. It was more like Ramon had deliberately pushed him out, afraid of what might come out during their whiskey-fueled conversations. Patrick was the kind of man who carried secrets like weapons. If he ever felt cornered, he'd use them. Ramon stepped outside into the bright Los Angeles sun. It stabbed his eyes like needles. He put on his sunglasses and sat in the car without starting the engine. The memories were coming faster now, clearer. That night, Marcus Ellis had run. Ramon remembered chasing him down the narrow alley behind a liquor store. Trash cans clattered, dogs barked, sirens echoed far away. The boy had glanced back, just once, and Ramon saw something metallic in his hand. In that split second, instincts fired. His finger squeezed the trigger. One shot. The boy dropped. The phone slipped from his fingers and shattered on the pavement. Patrick had reached him seconds later. You okay? I think I messed up. Patrick looked down at the body, then at the shattered phone, then back at Ramon. No. You thought he had a weapon. It was dark. He ran. That's what you'll write in your report. I saw a phone, Pat. Not a gun. Patrick stepped closer. And if you say that, they'll crucify you. A white cop. A dead black kid. Think anyone's going to look at facts? Ramon had wanted to protest, but his hands were shaking, and something inside him already knew Patrick was right, or at least that he believed he was. So he wrote the report. They said the boy was a known gang affiliate, that there were calls about armed suspects in the area, that the officer feared for his life. No charges, no hearing. The media barely blinked. It was just another blurred name on the evening news. Back in the present, Ramon finally started the engine and headed home. That night, he opened an old cardboard box from his closet, one he hadn't touched in years. Inside were loose photographs, case notes, even an old police radio. At the bottom, wrapped in a towel, was a journal. He had kept it for exactly 1 year after the shooting before locking it away, thinking he could outrun the guilt. He opened it to the first page. April 13th, 1999. I saw his face. I keep seeing it. Eyes wide, confused, like he didn't understand what was happening until it was too late. I told myself it was just a mistake. But deep down, I know better. It was fear. I was afraid. And that fear pulled the trigger. The entries grew darker as they went on. Shorter, more detached. Until, by December, they stopped altogether. He closed the journal and stared at it. Then he stood up and went to the kitchen, opened the drawer by the fridge, and pulled out an old yellow page torn from a telephone book. Someone had written a number in red ink across it. V. Ellis, 323-555-7822. He picked up the landline. His fingers hesitated on the dial, then stopped. No, you do this face to face, he told himself. So the next morning before sunrise, Ramon dressed in plain clothes, jeans, gray hoodie, old boots, and drove south. The neighborhood hadn't changed much. Maybe a little more gentrified, but the bones were still the same. Liquor stores, chain-link fences, murals of saints and angels, and ghosts. So many ghosts. He parked across from a small, faded building with peeling paint and a sagging roof. A sign hung crooked above the door. Second Chance Shelter. Volunteers welcome. He watched for a few minutes. A woman stepped out carrying 2 bags of donated food. She was in her late 50s, maybe early 60s, with tired eyes and a firm walk. Ramon recognized her immediately. Violet Ellis. She had aged, but grief etched itself in the same way time did. Her posture was strong, but her face held a stillness that only comes from loss that never goes away. Ramon got out of the car, walked across the street. His voice caught in his throat. He did not say who he was. He just said, "Ma'am, you need help with those?" She looked at him, suspicious, but nodded. They walked inside together, and for the first time in 20 years, Ramon Brown stepped into the presence of the woman whose life he had shattered. Violet did not trust easily. Ramon could see it in the way she handed him the box of canned goods. Arms extended, eyes narrowed, body slightly turned, ready to pull back. He didn't blame her. She had no reason to trust anyone, especially a stranger who just happened to show up and offer help. But she let him in. The shelter was dim, filled with the low murmur of volunteers unpacking supplies and clients waiting quietly for breakfast. Ramon moved through the space like a ghost, stacking boxes, scrubbing counters, replacing light bulbs. He said little. He watched more than he spoke. Every now and then he caught Violet watching him. Curious, maybe, but mostly guarded. Her face never softened. It wasn't guilt that kept him silent. It was the weight of it. One word, Marcus, and the world would change again. His truth would detonate her life a second time. She had found a way to move forward, even if she still carried the pain. He had no right to reopen that wound unless he was ready to bleed too. At noon, when the shelter quieted down, Violet handed him a glass of lemonade and sat across from him in the cramped office. "You from around here?" she asked. Ramon nodded. "Used to be. Haven't been back in years." "You military?" "No." She gave him a long look. "You carry yourself like someone who's seen things." He didn't respond. She took a sip of her drink. "Most people don't last more than a week volunteering here, but you're not most people, are you?" "I'm not sure that's a compliment." "Wasn't meant to be." A pause settled between them. Then, without lifting her eyes from the desk, she said, "My son would have been 37 this year." The words hung in the air like fog. Ramon's throat tightened. "I'm sorry." "You didn't kill him," she said without emotion. "I can tell." "But you look like someone who's been near that kind of death." He couldn't breathe for a moment. Couldn't look at her. Marcus was smart, she continued. Loved chess, hated loud noises. He had this habit of leaving the refrigerator door open and walking away. Used to drive me crazy. Her voice broke slightly. Funny what you remember. He wanted to say something, anything, but all that came out was silence. That night, Ramon sat in his car long after the shelter closed. The parking lot was empty, save for a flickering streetlight and a pair of teenagers smoking behind the dumpster. He didn't see them. He saw Marcus, standing at the end of an alley, turning, a flash of metal, the crack of the gunshot. His fingers still remembered the tension of the trigger. He opened the glove compartment and pulled out the old leather journal. Flipping to a blank page, he began to write. July 10th, 2019. I met her. I helped her lift a box. That's how it started. She gave me lemonade and talked about her son. She doesn't know who I am, but I think somehow she senses something. She looks at me like I'm unfinished business. The next day he returned. She gave him a list of things to fix. Light switches, a leaky pipe, a cracked window. He worked silently. She watched from the office. One afternoon, he found her standing in the shelter's common room, staring at a wall of photos. Faces of people who had come through, some still alive, some gone. In the center was a single photo, a boy with kind eyes and a crooked smile. Beneath it, a handwritten caption. He just wanted to live. Ramon stood beside her, silent. He was walking home, she said. Didn't even know about the robbery. Just happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. That's what the cops told me. Said he matched a suspect description. Said there was a chase. Said he might have had a weapon. She turned to him. Her eyes were sharp now, searching. They said a lot of things. You ever hear a story and know it's missing something? Like it's been edited down? Ramon felt cold. Yeah, he said. I've heard stories like that. She didn't press further, just nodded, as if she already knew. Later that evening, as he was leaving, Violet called out to him. You never told me your name. He hesitated. Ray. She nodded slowly. Thank you, Ray. For the help. He drove home and didn't sleep. Instead, he watched the recording he had made, the one for his daughter, over and over. Every time he noticed the slight tremble in his voice, the regret in his eyes, the fear. He opened his laptop, created a new folder. He began scanning pages from the journal, labeling photos, sorting audio recordings. He copied everything to a flash drive and sealed it in an envelope. On the outside, he wrote one name, Violet Ellis. He didn't know when he would give it to her, or if he ever could. But for the first time in 20 years, he had stopped running. He knew he had to see Patrick. It wasn't a desire. It was a reckoning. A thread left dangling for too long. Patrick Hardy was the only person still alive who knew the full truth about what happened that night. The only one who could confirm, or deny, the version of events that Ramon was finally ready to bring into the light. He found the address through a retired officer's database. Patrick was listed as head of security at a private residential community in Tucson, Arizona. The place looked like it had been carved out of the desert with a dull blade, flat, sun-bleached, and dry enough to crack your bones. When Ramon pulled up, Patrick was sitting in a plastic chair under a shade tarp, sipping soda from a can, and resting one hand lazily on the grip of a sidearm. His face was more weathered than Ramon remembered, his gut bigger, his hair thinner, but his eyes were sharp as ever, the kind that didn't miss much and didn't forgive easily. Damn, Patrick said, standing slowly. Ramon Brown in the flesh. Thought you dropped off the planet. We need to talk. Patrick gave a lazy nod, motioning toward the back of the guard trailer. Always knew this day would come. They sat at a flimsy folding table with mismatched lawn chairs and an overflowing ashtray between them. Patrick lit a cigarette, then passed over a second unopened soda. Ramon didn't take it. I thought you'd buried all that, Patrick said, squinting at him through the smoke. I tried. Then why dig it up now? Because I can't die with it. Patrick blinked, then laughed. So it's like that. Some kind of moral cleanse before you kick the bucket? I've got stage 4 pancreatic cancer. Weeks, maybe. I need you to confirm what happened. That the kid, Marcus, didn't have a weapon. That I made a mistake. That we lied. Patrick exhaled, long and slow. You want me to admit that we falsified a report and buried a bad shoot? That we saved your ass and mine and probably half the precinct? We didn't save anything. We just delayed the fallout. Patrick leaned back in his chair. You think dragging all this into the daylight makes it better? It won't bring him back. It won't clean your slate. You'll die with your guilt, and I'll live with the consequences. I'm not asking you to go public. I just need the truth, in your words, on record. Patrick studied him. His voice dropped a notch. You remember what that year was like? Cops were targets. Protesters at every corner. You think internal affairs would have looked at facts? They'd have seen a dead black kid and a white shooter. And that would have been the end of your career. Prison. Headlines. Maybe worse. I don't care about any of that now. No, of course you don't. Because now you're dying. He flicked his cigarette into the dirt. You think truth buys you redemption? No, Ramon said quietly. It buys her closure. Patrick's expression hardened. You mean his mother? Ramon nodded. Patrick shook his head and stood up. You always were too soft for this job, Ray. That softness kept me from becoming a monster. They stood in silence. Then Patrick muttered, You know what's funny? I still see his face sometimes. Not in dreams, just flashes. In crowds. On the news. Every kid with a phone in his hand looks like him. I didn't pull the trigger, but I killed him too. When I told you to lie. When I wrote that damn report. He looked at Ramon. You want my words? Fine. Put your phone on the table. Ramon did. Patrick leaned down, his face close to the mic. April 12th, 1999, South Los Angeles. Marcus Ellis was not armed. I saw the phone. Ramon panicked. He pulled the trigger, and I told him to lie. We both did, and no one ever asked the right questions. Not once. He stepped back. There, you got your truth. Now get the hell out of here. Ramon picked up the phone, stopped the recording, and nodded once. As he walked back to his car, Patrick called out to him. You really think she's gonna forgive you? Ramon paused, turned halfway. No, he said, but I'm not doing this for forgiveness. He drove away without looking back. That night, in a cheap motel on the edge of Tucson, Ramon opened his laptop. He stared at the folder he had been building. Photos, journal pages, scanned reports, the video confession. All of it. He added Patrick's voice recording, then copied everything onto a flash drive. He slid the drive into an envelope. Wrote on the front, For Violet Ellis. Only if I don't return. He returned to Los Angeles before dawn. The same haze hung over the skyline. The same broken rhythm of the city pulsed beneath his tires. Familiar. Unchanged. He parked outside the shelter. Violet was already there, sitting on the steps with a thermos in her hands. You disappeared for 2 days, she said. I thought maybe you changed your mind. I didn't. She studied him. You find what you were looking for? Ramon sat beside her. I found the last piece of the story. Silence stretched between them. Violet, he said, his voice trembling. There's something I need to tell you. Something I should have told you 20 years ago. She didn't flinch, didn't look surprised. Then say it, she whispered. I'm listening. The sun was barely rising over Los Angeles, casting soft orange light across the shelter's rooftop. Violet sat perfectly still beside Ramon, her fingers curled tightly around the metal thermos. She said nothing, and somehow that silence made it harder for him to speak. Ramon's heart pounded like it wanted to flee his chest. He had imagined this moment 1,000 different ways. Angry, tearful, violent. But now, in the real quiet of dawn, he just felt empty. He took a breath that hurt going in. I was the officer who shot your son. Violet didn't move. Not a twitch. Not a gasp. I thought he had a gun. He ran. I followed. He turned. I saw something in his hand, and I fired. Her eyes were locked forward, as if staring through time. It was a phone, Ramon said. Just a phone. He wasn't doing anything wrong. Still nothing. My partner, Patrick Hardy, told me to lie. He said the truth would destroy me. Said no one would believe I made a mistake. So we buried it. The report said Marcus was armed. That he was fleeing a robbery. That the shooting was justified. He paused, but Violet gave no indication that she heard. The thermos trembled slightly in her grip. I wanted to tell the truth, But I was a coward. I went home that night, looked my daughter in the eye, and pretended I was still a good man. He reached into his jacket and pulled out the envelope. It looked too small to carry something as heavy as the truth. "This is everything," he said. "My report, the real one, my journals, a video, even a confession from Patrick. If you want to destroy me, it's all there. If you want to forget me, I'll understand." She finally looked at him. Her voice was low, calm, but dangerous in its stillness. "You think this makes it better?" "No," he said. "It just makes it honest. You murdered my child." "Yes." "You watched me grieve. You let me believe he was a threat, a gang member, a statistic." "I did." Her eyes began to water, but her voice never broke. "You helped at the shelter. You smiled at me. You ate my food. You stood in the room with his picture on the wall and said nothing. I thought it would be easier." "For who?" she snapped. Ramon didn't answer. Violet stood. Her hands were shaking now. "I don't want your envelope. I don't want your guilt. You want to make peace with God? Fine. But don't put that weight on me." He nodded slowly. "I understand." She took a step away, then stopped. "I used to think if I ever found out who did it, I'd want to kill them," she said. "But now, looking at you, I just see a man who already died 20 years ago." She walked back into the building and didn't look back. Ramon sat on the steps for a long time after she left. The envelope lay beside him like an anchor. He thought about tearing it up, burning it, pretending this had never happened. But he couldn't. Not anymore. He drove home in silence. At his apartment, he placed the envelope in a fireproof lockbox, along with a letter for his daughter. "Lily," he wrote, "I didn't tell you this to hurt you. I told you because no one should carry something like this alone. You deserve to know who your father really was." He signed it, folded it, sealed it. That night, he sat in the same recliner, looked around the same quiet room, and realized that nothing would ever feel clean again. He opened his laptop, pressed record one last time. "I told her. She didn't forgive me. She shouldn't, but I told her." He stopped the recording, closed the lid. The pain in his chest was worse now. The doctors had given him weeks. He could feel the clock winding down. He looked at the family photo on the shelf. Him, Lily, his late wife. They were smiling. It didn't feel real anymore. He whispered to the silence, "I'm sorry, Marcus." Then he closed his eyes and let the night take him. The funeral was small. No family beyond his daughter. No brothers in arms. No badge on the coffin. Just a plain wooden box in a sun-bleached cemetery on the edge of the city. A quiet Tuesday morning with no eulogy, no honor guard, no 21 gun salute. Lily stood alone beside the grave. She wore black, but not out of tradition, more out of instinct. The priest spoke with the vague warmth of someone who didn't know the man in the casket, reciting verses that were meant to comfort, but hung in the air like polite lies. When it was over, Lily didn't leave. She knelt by the grave and pulled out the letter her father had left her. She had read it twice already, but still couldn't quite believe it. The words were neatly written, the voice unmistakably his, direct, unsentimental, haunted. The truth had staggered her, and yet, in a strange way, it had explained so much. The silences, the nightmares, the way he never talked about the job after retiring. She looked across the cemetery and saw a figure standing near the gate. Violet Ellis. She wasn't dressed for mourning. She wore jeans, a gray coat, and sunglasses. For a long moment she just stood there, watching from a distance. Then she walked slowly toward the grave. Lily stood to greet her. She had never met this woman before, but something about her presence was magnetic, solid and composed, like stone smoothed by years of rain. "You're his daughter," Violet said quietly. Lily nodded. "You must be Violet." Neither offered a hand. Neither tried to smile. "He left this for you," Lily said, holding out the fireproof envelope with shaking fingers. "Said it was yours." Violet looked at it for a moment, then took it. "Did you know?" she asked. "Not until after he died," Lily replied. "I never would have guessed. I mean, I always knew there was something he was carrying. I just thought it was the job. War stories. Trauma." "It was a war," Violet said softly. "Just not the kind you come back from." They stood in silence for a few moments.
I don't know what to say,
Lily finally admitted.
Part of me wants to defend him. Part of me wants to never speak his name again.
Violet nodded slowly. That's how I felt about Marcus's father. He left 2 months after the funeral. Said he couldn't breathe in that house anymore. Lily looked down at the coffin.
Do you hate him?
Violet didn't answer immediately.
I did,
she said at last. For a long time. I built my whole life around that hate. It kept me warm at night. Then I started working at the shelter. Met mothers who lost more than I did. Kids who would never get second chances. And I realized, the world doesn't stop for grief. You either live with it, or you let it kill you. She tapped the envelope gently. This doesn't fix anything, she said. But at least it's real. Lily felt tears sting her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. She didn't want pity. Not from Violet. Not from herself. If you ever want to talk, Lily said quietly, about him, or about Marcus, I'd like to know more. Violet gave the smallest nod. Then she turned, walked away from the grave, and didn't look back. Weeks passed. Spring came to the city, shy and slow. Rain cleaned the sidewalks. Flowers bloomed in the cracks. The shelter stayed busy. Life, as it always does, moved on. In the quiet of her apartment, Violet sat at her kitchen table, the envelope finally opened beside her. She had read every word, watched every recording. Ramon's voice filled the room like a ghost that didn't want to leave. She didn't cry, she didn't scream. Instead, she wrote a single sentence on a blank piece of paper, folded it, and drove to the cemetery. The grave was quiet, the grass around it already growing. She knelt beside the headstone and placed the note beneath a small rock on the soil. Then she stood, hands in her coat pockets, and whispered to no one. You'll never be forgiven. But I understood. The note remained there for weeks, undisturbed. People walked by. Some stopped to read it. Most didn't. The city kept breathing. And somewhere, in the silence between sunset and nightfall, the truth lived on. No longer hidden, no longer clean, but finally free.